on a second. Right, we're connected to the cloud. Perfect, and recording. So welcome along to our Teeling tasting tonight. And thank you so much for booking at last minute. We were sitting there on Tuesday thinking to ourselves, what are we going to do on Friday night? And then we thought, you know what? Why not do a tasting? And the team at Victoria Park, we've got some of them who joined us online tonight, whipped around and very quickly filled some bottles. Do have to confess, the bottles were in Wellington until Wednesday. So the whole thing really is quite a logistical feat. So the team managed to get the bottles up from Wellington, the team at Vic Park managed to fill them, and you all booked tickets. Absolutely perfect. So thank you all very, very much. And we've got a super exciting tasting. I'm very pleased to introduce to you Kenny. Kenny is the brand ambassador up at Hancock's, who are very fortunate to be the importers of Teeling Irish whiskey. So best Irish whiskey in the world. And I know the team at Hancock's absolutely adore the fact that they import this into New Zealand. So without further ado, Kenny, I'll hand over to you and you can take us through the wonderful world of Teeling.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Kia ora koutou katoa. Yeah, I am Kenny. It's amazing to see lots of familiar faces and names on the screen. Don't be scared to turn your cameras off because it's also nice for me to look at faces as opposed to black screens with names and red crosses. It makes me feel like I'm doing something wrong. So if you've never been to a virtual tasting, it is a little bit different, especially for a high energy individual like myself. I usually feed off the crowd and it's really hard not to have the interaction. So I've gone out of my way to make some notes so I don't ramble on too much. So if you see me popping my head down to look at my notes every now and again, it's just to make sure that we're not here until midnight, because unfortunately there's not enough Teeling whiskey in these bottles to last that long. All right, so the idea behind tonight is to have a look at I guess the core range when it comes to Teeling whiskey. So those are the whiskies on my right here, and then we've also put in a few of the limited editions, and obviously we finish off with a pretty special wee number in the Teeling 28, which only reached our shores not so long ago. And it's actually going to be my first time trying it as well. So when they said, Kenny, can you do this tasting on a Friday night? I was like, Kenny, we're going to be trying the Teeling 28. I was like, oh yeah, absolutely. No worries. So before we get going, all my yarns, I promise, make a lot more sense once we've had a bit of whiskey in us. So if we just grab the very first sample, so it should say on there, single grain, glass one, flight one. And this is going to be the Teeling single grain. So as we go through the tasting, again, it's hard to get a gauge of what your whiskey knowledge is like, I guess. So the first thing to do is obviously just have a look at the color. All right. And the hue on this always strikes me as being so bloody sensational. The color predominantly comes in this one. It has been aged in ex-Cabernet Sauvignon barrels in their casks. So on the nose, straight away, you do get quite a big nose of, I guess, red wine. A lot of sweetness as well. So what is single grain? So single, just referring to the fact that all the whiskey inside the bottle comes from one distillery. And then the grain part tells us that we use, a combination of grains. All right, we're not just using malted barley like we would in a single malt, for example. So here our mash bill or our grain recipe is 95% corn and 5% malted barley. It is all column still, and like I said to you before, it matured exclusively in ex-Cabernet Sauvignon barrels. All right, all the Teeling whiskey range is either 46% or higher. All right, non-chill filtered. And we don't add any coloring either. All the color is natural and it comes from the barrel. So I won't repeat that because it's true across the whole range. All right. So if you need to add water, I just have a very small pipette, and one of my good friends who's tuned in tonight will show me up. I don't know if you can find Tash, she'll probably hold up her ridiculous. Look at the size of that thing. Wowee. I have envy. That's beautiful. If you do want to add some water to your whiskey, I suggest that you try your whiskey first before adding water, and then go from there. But if you just grab your glass, cheers to somebody. If you're sitting next to somebody, if you're not, just point it at the screen. It's the same kind of feeling. But here's to like-minded people on a Friday night enjoying some Teeling whiskey, and hopefully everybody's in good health, and doing well through this whole COVID thing, and also the earthquake. So, Slans.
Don't break the computer there, Jamie. I saw that. It was quite a hefty cheers to the screen.
So the beautiful thing about starting on this whiskey, and the way that I kind of look at the core range, which we're going to go through first, and as we know, the Irish like to drink whiskey. So I look at this as being kind of like breakfast, lunch, dinner, dessert, and a nightcap. All right. So we're starting off with the single grain. And for me, this is breakfast because the texture and the mouthfeel that you find in this whiskey is absolutely freaking amazing. All right. So we're talking about the mash bill, or the grain recipe, being 95% corn. So corn, usually when we're talking about whiskey, it adds a fair bit of sweetness and things. But for me, the biggest thing that it actually adds is viscosity and mouthfeel, and it's that whole creaminess on the palate. That comboed up with the fact that it is in a column still, and column still tends to make lighter whiskey. It makes this a beautiful breakfast whiskey, if you're that way inclined, of course. So for me, I don't like to add water to many whiskies. There's a few that I do, but in this range, and especially the Irish whiskey style and what Teeling is trying to produce, for me at 46%, this is absolutely amazing. But yeah, a full term. In the ex-Cabernet Sauvignon, you can tell by the color, the nose, but also, on the palate. Hopefully you've all got one of these little booklets that the Glengarry team put together. There are some tasting notes and things highlighted on each of the pages. I won't go through so much about individual flavors and things, because unfortunately I can't tell what you're smelling and what you're tasting. And if I ramble on too much about what I'm tasting, you're going to probably start believing it, which is a horrible idea. All right. So I'll just introduce you a little bit to the Teeling family, who they are, where they come from, while you enjoy this first whiskey. So we have to look back all the way to 1782. All right. The Teeling family has been around making whiskey in the entrepreneurship game for a long period of time. And there was a man by the name of Walter Teeling, who actually started a very, very small bespoke distillery in Marrowbone Lane in Newmarket in Dublin. And this was actually later sold. It was family owned for a long period of time, but then it was sold to Marrowbone Lane Distilleries, which at the time was one of the biggest Irish distilleries around. Unfortunately, from that period of time until about 1987, the Teeling family weren't very much involved in the whiskey industry. However, when they did pop up, they popped up pretty dramatically. So they actually set up, John Teeling set up something known as the Cooley Distillery. And that's where his sons, Jack and Stephen, who look after Teeling whiskey today, cut their teeth and really learnt their craft, I guess, in the whiskey industry. So Cooley was owned by the Teeling family until about 2011, when it was sold to Beam Suntory. And what happened then is Jack and Stephen Teeling actually broke off. They used their money to invest in what we know now today as the Teeling Whiskey Company. So what they managed to do, and this was in 2012 when they established the brand, is when they were actually exiting the Cooley Distillery deal with Beam Suntory, not only did they get a bloody handsome sum, they also managed to get about 16,000 barrels of whiskey as part of that deal. So when they started the Teeling brand, they already had 16,000 barrels of whiskey aging, which then they would go on to sell and use to actually start making their whiskey. In 2015, they actually opened their own distillery in Dublin, and they have been there ever since. And they put claim to being the very first distillery to be opened in Dublin in over 150 years, which is a pretty cool thing. And after we taste the next whiskey, I will talk to you a little bit about the specific area of the Liberties, where they were founded. And we're also going to look at a little bit of the history of Irish whiskey, because it is pretty cool and interesting. So hopefully everyone's tried the single grain. And for the few people that do have their cameras on, is it a thumbs up so far or thumbs down? Thumbs up? Yeah. So that's good. All right, because otherwise I'll just get T to kick you off. It's easy. AT. Do we have any questions so far, mate? I don't have the question box up.
Yeah, do we know how old this whiskey is? Like single grains, we don't really see heaps of them, but especially, is it completely fully matured in the wine barrels?
Yep, so it is completely matured solely in ex-cab sav barrels. All right, it doesn't see the light of day in any other barrel. And this whiskey, they don't, even me, they won't tell me exactly. It's somewhere between 4 and 6. Yeah.
I mean, it's, as you said, it's definitely a decent breakfast whiskey. Those single grains are always quite heavy on the rolled oats. Yeah. I always find them a bit, I mean, that's it. So that's wine barrel definitely adds that sort of fruit and
for sure,
fruit and spice to it. So yeah, that's
and I tend to you know, in my job, I'm fortunate enough to look after all spirits, but you know, you have a lot of people who like, for example, single malt Scotch whiskey, and then you have those people who really like bourbon, for example, right? I tend to use Irish whiskey as a bit of a gateway between the two, because those that are really passionate about one, right, are pretty strong-minded and pretty strong-headed. So the beautiful thing about the different expressions that I guess Teeling and Irish whiskey is known for, and we'll discover some of those as we go through the different variants here. It's a beautiful gateway between the two and get people to actually understand the difference and what brings that difference within these whiskeys. So yeah, it's going to be a cool little journey. All good?
How strong is it? Is it 40?
46.
46 as well. Yeah. Hides that quite well, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So 46% or more across the range. That's what Teeling is all about. Yeah.
Cool.
All righty. So we shall, yep. Go on. Were you going to ask something?
No, just saying cool. That's good.
Beauty. All right.
The glass is empty.
So we'll move on. We're going to just try the blended small batch. So if you can just pour that into your glass. Thank you to the people at Glengarry's who filled all these miniature bottles. I've just filled 500 for all my staff at Hancock's too, for a staff training we do, and it's a lot of hard work. So thanks for giving up your time. Hopefully you're still sane. All righty. So hopefully between the two, we notice a huge difference. All right. So here we're talking about we're stepping down a little bit in the corn content. So here we have 75% corn and 25% malted barley. All right. And this is kind of the Teeling signature product, I guess, in their whole entire range. This is the very first product that they released into market, and then they built around that with, and you'll see some crazy cask uses along the way. But the thing that we need to know about Teeling is that they don't just follow the narrow path. They forge their own way. And their thinking was all about, and we'll talk about a little bit later, why the Phoenix on the bottle, for example. But they really wanted to pave the way for Irish whiskey forward, with taking into consideration the past, because it is quite a beautiful past. But they always do things a little bit different. So 75% corn, 25% malted barley. It's about 4 to 6 years it will spend in ex-bourbon barrels, and then they'll get a finish for 6 to 12 months. Ex-Central American rum barrels. All right, so from the ex-bourbon barrels, we expect to get a lot of that vanilla, a lot of oak, and then obviously with the rum casks, we start introducing things like, you know, dried fruit and spices and things. So give that a good nose. Oh, yum. How good. The thing that stands out for me, and actually in all of Teeling's products, is the body, right? It's that viscosity. It seems to just really, sometimes you have to work to really coat your whole palate and get all the flavors from it. But the beautiful thing about Teeling whiskey is that it seems to do that job. Seems to do that job for you. And the use of rum casks, we see it a little bit in single malt Scotch and things, and I think it's something that we will continue to see moving forward. But this whiskey here, the idea behind it is to make people fall in love with Irish whiskey, but also Teeling as a brand. And I think it does that. It's the ultimate gateway drug, if you want to call it. It is super, super easy to drink, but it's still, again, 46%. And that rum finish just makes it a little bit more complex than some of the, I guess, for better use of the term, entry-level Irish whiskies, which tend to lack a little bit of that body and substance. So, So the Irish whiskey history. We'll talk about this for a while we enjoy this beautiful blended. So at the moment, Irish whiskey is on fire. All right. So I guess in the whiskey industry, we talk about the big five. So that's American, Scotch, Irish, Canadian, and Japanese whiskey. And out of all those five styles, the Irish is growing the fastest. It's absolutely amazing. Not only because they make beautiful whiskey, but also because of some of the history that comes with Irish whiskey. So in the 19th century, when Walter Teeling set up, Irish whiskey was massive. It was known as the golden age for Irish whiskey, and Irish whiskey seemed to rule the world, and it happened to be that Dublin, where Teeling whiskey is made, it was the king, right? So 70% at this point in time, 70% of all global whiskey, right, sales around the world, 70% of that whiskey came from Dublin, right? So that's a pretty amazing stat. That's a huge number. And it was outselling Scotch at that point in time at about 3-1. All right, so it was huge. If you put that into gallons and actual bottles, it is quite mind blowing how much Irish whiskey was being consumed. And so in the 19th century, there were about 37 fully functional distilleries in Ireland, and 32 of those were in this area called the Liberties. All right, so the Liberties was the industrial area in Dublin, and it was about a square mile area, and it became known as the Golden Triangle, obviously because of the amount of whiskey that was flowing off stills and out of barrels in this very concentrated area. So the reason why whiskey really took off in this area and in Dublin as a whole is because the people of Dublin in this time in the 19th century were extremely well educated. They had ample access to clean water, which we know for making whiskey is extremely important. We had in neighboring countryside, there was a lot of barley being grown and really high quality barley. So there was absolutely no problem in getting the products to actually make whiskey. And there was also a really, really big high-end wine trade. So what that meant is that the whiskey distillers were actually working really, really close hand in hand with some of the winemakers. And actually in the 19th century, when we're talking about things like blended whiskey and such, it wasn't actually really the distillers that were doing the barrel aging and such. They were working with wine merchants who would then put whiskey into the barrels and blend it from there. So originally that's actually how the Irish industry was developed. So back in the day, in this time period, especially if you had the seal of Dublin on your bottle or on your product, it all came down to being a superior, like really high end quality product. So Dublin was on fire, and it was amazing. And that was the 19th century. However, there was a perfect storm brewing. And if we move forward just a few years, sort of into the 20th century, we had four main factors which actually turned the whole Irish whiskey industry upside down, and it went from complete hero to absolutely zero in this time period. So the first thing, and I'll quickly scan over them. So the first one was Irish Temperance movement, and this was religious based. So 8 million Irish citizens in this time actually signed something known as the pledge, and what that meant is 1/3 of the population actually went complete sober. Hard to believe for Irish people. If there are any Irish people out there, it's probably pretty hard to believe. And the other 2/3, you may have heard of a very small company by the name of Guinness. They actually came up with quite a savvy slogan that went like this: whiskey is the curse of the people, Guinness is the nurse of the people. So what happened is, because of this temperance movement, a lot of people obviously went sober, but a lot of a predominant whiskey drinking country in Ireland went from drinking whiskey to drinking beer, and that has actually never really bounced back. And because we understand the Irish's love for beer as well. The second thing is the column still. Hopefully everyone is relatively familiar with the types of still that we have to make whiskey. Well, one of them is a pot still, one of them is which is the more traditional style, and the column still came around in 1830. What this means, it's a lot more efficient, and it makes a much higher proof, I guess, cleaner spirit. But the Irish distillers actually never really wanted to use this. They were very, very against using it. Pot still to them was life. And while the Scots and also the Americans started to use the column still, the Irish were sort of left behind just because of how stubborn they were. The other thing is Prohibition. So we're talking here 1920 to 1933 in America. And the reason why that is so important is because America for the Irish was their biggest whiskey market. All right. So obviously between this time period, it was made a lot more difficult to drink. It was still possible if you had the right connections and whatnot. But yeah, so that market was taken away from them. And the last one is obviously the War of Independence that Ireland had. And as a result, a lot of the European trade routes into the Commonwealth completely grinded to a stop. So by 1966, we started this story talking about the fact that there were 37 distilleries, they were on fire, everything was going really well. By the time we got to 1966, the last 4 distilleries in Ireland actually put their money and their whiskey together to create what's known as Middleton Co. And the reason for that was to try, I guess, create a monopoly where they weren't fighting against each other, but they were all trying to save Irish whiskey as an industry as a whole. So it was pretty grave, and for a long period of time, Irish whiskey wasn't even on the map. So we're extremely lucky to be doing this on a Friday night, and to also have choice. And I'll talk a little bit more after we try the next whiskey about, I guess, where we were, but where we are now, because it has bounced back dramatically, and it makes me extremely happy. So we'll move on. We'll get whiskey number 3 in the glass. So here we're going to be trying the Teeling Pot Still Irish Whiskey. So this should say glass 3, flight 1 on the bottle. So the awesome thing about pot still whiskey is that this is the only true unique style of Irish whiskey. All right, there's other people in other countries doing single grain, small batch, single malt, obviously, but when it comes to single pot still whiskey, this is a true Irish style. So what do you need to do to be an Irish pot still whiskey is you need to use both malted and unmalted barley. All right, and you have to use a minimum of 30% in your mash bill of both those products. but you can also use up to 5% of any other grain in your mash bill. All right, but you have to be distilled in a pot still, made from one distillery, and you have to be aged for at least 3 years in wood. Now, I was going to touch on it later, but I'll do it now. So the reason why I say wood as opposed to oak is because in Irish whiskey, the rules state that you can actually use other types of wood as well. So whether we're talking acacia, maple, cherry wood, pine, chestnut, you can use it all. All right. Yes, oak is predominant, and they tend to use a lot of oak. But even at Teeling, they are playing around with using a lot of different types of wood. There's not many that have actually made it to the bottle just yet. And there's a few reasons for that. We've all heard about the angel share, for example. So by using oak, the wood structure there actually makes it really, really good, I guess, for aging whiskey. And we tend to lose about 2% to the angel share every year at Teeling. But the wood structure of other types of wood just mean that the evaporation and things is a lot higher. So they don't want to miss out on pennies. All right. So when I say it has to be aged for at least 3 years in wood, it doesn't just mean oak. All right. So we're trying, obviously, the Teeling pot still here. Now, this is 50% malted barley and 50% unmalted barley. All right. So you might be wondering, why unmalted barley? Well, again, we have to look back kind of at history when the Irish were still ruled by the English, I guess. And what the English were doing is they were taxing the Irish for the use of malted barley. All right. So what the Irish did is they were like, okay, well, we'll just start using some unmalted barley. So that kind of opened that door. But in the whiskey itself, what you'll probably start to pick up a lot more with the use of unmalted barley. And I don't know if there are any rye drinkers out there, but unmalted barley to me brings out a lot of spice in the whiskey. All right. So it has that rye sort of style character. Here we are aged in ex-bourbon, ex-Oloroso sherry, and virgin oak. I absolutely, personally, I unfortunately, we don't get to drink a lot of it. There aren't that many people actually producing pot still whiskey like this. And this is quite a traditional style in terms of taste, but hopefully you can all really appreciate that spiciness that's starting to come through, whether it's baking spice, but it also, compared to the other two, for me, it comes across as being a little bit sharp, a little bit hotter. But again, it does have beautiful body. And I don't know whether people have noticed when you swirl it around the glass, you know, you can see the viscosity again is next level amazing.
Yeah, Kenny, just on that one, we've got lots of great comments on that one. You know, it started off at the beginning that the pot still has got a really good nose to it. I know you can't necessarily read them as you go through, so I'll give you the whole lot. That's such a banger. True. The biscuit at the end with the spice, so alive. Hope I got that one right. And then true on that one. Yep. Yeah. It's it's for me it's a wonderful thing, and it just the great thing about Irish whiskey, and we are talking about one brand, and yes, I work for them, but the amazing thing here is, you know, you can put these three whiskeys in front of someone, and it would challenge me if it was blind. You know, trying to figure these whiskeys out can be quite a hard task, but it shows you the diversity that they have. But yeah, I think it's pretty special. This pot still whiskey, and like I said, I'm so glad that you guys get to try it in the lineup tonight, and it's so good to hear the feedback, because if you were to just give it to someone, a lot of people don't actually understand what's in the bottle and the rules that I guess you have to follow to create this product. So it makes me extremely happy. Awesome. Any further questions to you?
No questions, but like that was really good. And like this first time I've actually tried the pot still from Teeling, and like you said, it's just like a true expression.
Yeah.
And like, what's it, $89? Like, that's a steal. So I've got to get myself a bottle, I think.
Yeah, it is cool too. I guess it is for me. Unique things are always really, really cool. We're so fortunate, I guess, in our industry to be surrounded by so much alcohol and so much great quality booze. Is that when there's something so, I guess, unique, and actually good point, Aroha, thank you, at that price point as well. You know, I think it's pretty fantastic. So very fortunate. Shall we move on?
Yeah, we've just had another little comment here, is that I believe that this is from Jamie saying, I believe that there is no one else in the world that can produce pot still whiskies besides the Irish from previous whiskey distillery tours in Ireland. You can tell it's been a long week. I'm struggling with words. This is very much a unique style to Ireland. I don't think anyone else can produce it. I might throw it over to Tash. Do you know any further, Tash? No, yes. I'm not sure. So can Tash talk? Can we unmute Tash?
I think
yeah, you're good to go.
Okay, so the way that the definitions work is slightly complicated. There are other places that can make pot still whiskey, but they can't make Irish pot still whiskey. So there are a couple of unique twists, but as you mentioned before, there are lots of other places in the world that do make a pot still style whiskey, but it's not exactly Irish. So it's Irish.
Awesome, thank you. And this is why it's so good to have so many like-minded people in one place, because if you can't answer it, surely someone else can. How good. Whiskey community. Thanks, Ash. Amazing. Alrighty, so we'll grab whiskey number 4. So this here should be, so we're kind of going to leave, we're going to delve into the world of single malt now. All right, so this is going to be the Teeling Whiskey Single Malt Whiskey. And here, hopefully everyone's relatively familiar with single malt whiskey, I guess, as the rules involved in that. Obviously, single, one distillery, malted barley only, made in a pot still, aged for 3 years in wood. And again, that whole wood thing is really important. All right, so for the single malt, here we actually, we're taking the piss a little bit because we've aged this in 5 different barrels. And so it is quite a complex wee number, but it is also a beautiful thing because it keeps you coming back for more. And there's so much to explore within this whiskey. So the 5 barrels are Oloroso Sherry, we have Port, we have White Burgundy, Cabernet Sauvignon, and Madeira. All right, so I have made a couple of notes, I guess, what each of these barrels tends to bring to this particular whiskey. So Oloroso Sherry, so it adds a lot of depth and obviously body, and then I guess the flavor profile it tends to create is a lot of dried fruit. We have Port, here we have a lot of stone fruit and plum that gets added to the whiskey. White Burgundy, this is quite a rare type of cask, and probably not something that you would stumble across commonly in any whiskey world. And we get a lot of tropical fruit from there. We use Cabernet Sauvignon, like we tried in the single grain right at the beginning. And the last one we use is Madeira. Again, a little bit different with Madeira. The barrels are exposed to sunlight, which tends to give you a lot of caramel and ginger spice. Cool. So, like I said, pretty complex. But give that a nose and a taste if you haven't done so already. Man, that is stunning. I love this. It's really hard to put in words, but this is simply stunning. and I guess it is a tip of the hat to, you know, I was saying earlier about Teeling really trying to forge a path for a whole Irish whiskey, and they're going about the way that they're going about it is to be a little bit different, right? And the use of these casks. I don't know if anyone's had the opportunity to, I guess, visit a distillery or do some kind of blending. It's not easy, right? To get all the flavors to integrate, to work well with one another, and to produce a whiskey of this quality is honestly second to none. And yeah, hats off to Teeling. This stands up to any whiskey that I've ever tried. It's I think it's absolutely stunning. Any questions on that one so far before I move on, T? Just explain a little bit about where we are now in the Irish whiskey world.
It looks like everyone's just speechless. So
yeah, which isn't a bad thing. Yeah. Well, hopefully everyone's enjoying it. Make sure you be honest in your feedback. If you don't understand or you don't like it, that's also okay. Right? It's we don't all, but yeah, you might have a problem with your taste buds if you aren't enjoying that. So we'll I'll just talk a little bit about, I guess, the rebirth of Irish whiskey, because it was pretty doom and gloom, as you heard previously, going from 37 active distilleries in Ireland to pretty much none, and there pretty much was absolutely no Irish whiskey industry left in the world, which is pretty scary. But there were, I guess, between the time period of 1978 and 2010, it is a long period, and we can talk about what happened, but there were 4 distilleries that were still, I guess, hanging on. They were Kilbeggan, Cooley, IDL, and Bushmills. Now, these guys were producing and selling whiskey, and they were selling reasonable amounts, but there was no real, I guess, opportunity for those smaller producers, for those smaller distilleries to get a look in, because these guys really controlled the market. So what happened, obviously, with the sale of Cooley Distillery, as we talked about earlier in 2011, is that it did give the boys the opportunity to start Teeling in 2012. And I guess that they were kind of like the first wave of new distilleries to open up in Ireland. So they were the first, like I said earlier, they were the first distillery to be built in Dublin for over 150 years. And for them, it was really, really important to go back to the birthplace of, the golden era, and that triangle that we talked about in the Liberties. They really wanted to bring that part of the world back to life. So they did. And then if you look at from 2012 until today, so I'm happy to tell you that there are now 38 active distilleries in Ireland, unless one's popped up over the last couple of months, but I don't think so, especially in these crazy COVID times. So we have bounced back considerably, and I urge you all to go online and have a look, because as I talked to you guys before about the fact that it was super concentrated in this Liberties area, 32 out of 37 distilleries were all in this part of Ireland. Now, if you look at where the distilleries are actually based, they're everywhere around Ireland. The map is starting to look a lot more, I guess, like the Scottish distillery map. So the cool thing about that is it does tend to give you different styles and things. But the awesome thing, I guess, about Teeling is that, yeah, there were bigger players in that time period, and those 4 that I talked to you about earlier, and they dominated for a long time. But Teeling is really starting to make a massive name for itself. Unfortunately, we don't get to try it, but they won Single Malt of the Year in 2019 with the Teeling 24, which was just a huge achievement. When you think about it, in 2012 they were established, so it didn't take them long to really put their foot down and help Irish whiskey get back on the map. And they continue to win award after award, and I don't think it's going to stop anytime soon. And hopefully you guys are enjoying the whiskey and can see, I guess, why. Right. So that's kind of a little bit about the rebirth, I guess, of Irish whiskey. And with anything, I guess, of fine quality in this day and age, it does seem like it's here to stay. I was talking about the big five when it comes to the whiskey industry earlier, and across the board, you know, we are so fortunate to get our hands on some amazing whiskey now. And yep, globally we are drinking less volume, but higher quality, you know. So for people who can appreciate whiskey like this on a Friday night, wherever you may be, I think we're in good stead. And I hopefully, fingers crossed, you know, the Irish whiskey industry isn't going to go anywhere anytime soon. So that'll be really nice if that happens. All right. And the other thing I want to touch on, and actually I was watching one of the previous tastings that Glengarry's did with Ardbeg, and it was actually, I don't know if Jack's online at the moment. Jack and Aroha, they hosted the guys from Ardbeg, and they were just talking about like the life cycle. You know, we're talking about a lot of different cask uses and stuff like that. But just remember that, you know, when we're talking about the single malt that we had, 5 barrels. You know, we're talking Oloroso, Port, Burgundy, Cab Sav, and Madeira. Before that, they were actually all ex-bourbon casks, right? So, you know, you have to remember that there's so many life cycles involved in raising these beautiful spirits. And before they became an Oloroso sherry barrel, they actually brought life to bourbon, right, in this instance. So the industry is so integrated, and, you know, we're all part of it, right? But it's, that's just, I actually had never really thought about it in that sense until I watched that, the replay of that tasting. And I thought it was a really, really interesting point. And I'm definitely going to steal that idea and use it in all my tastings, because it kind of makes you realize, how cool it is, and how important it is that the bourbon industry is doing well, so that we, I guess, when we're trying Irish whiskey and things like that, and the sherry world, can continue to produce these products. So, all right, so we'll move on.
So that was kind of just an attempt to tell everyone to keep drinking sherry and port as much as you can.
Yes, please. Yep. Yeah.
I think but it also goes alongside like the point of my dad like championing like Jack Daniels and like encouraging people to continue to drink Jack Daniels so that we can make these amazing single malt whiskeys.
Very true. Very true. Very, very true. Yeah, extremely important. So we'll move on to whiskey number 5. And so if you've got yourself another glass or whatever, excuse me. So this is quite an exciting wee moment, actually. So the first 4 whiskies that we tried have kind of been part of the Teeling core range for a few years now. And they've actually just decided and only really recently released this new expression. So I don't know, you may have seen the other ones before, but this is the new Teeling Blackpitts that we see here. So the cool thing about this is that this is our first foray as Teeling into the peated single malt world. All right, so hopefully you've all got it in front of you now. And I tried this for the first time last week, actually, and I'm extremely excited to be trying it again. So
there's a quick sidetrack on a question about Brabazon Series 4, and that's about a month away. Is that right, Kenny?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just with that whole month away, it can be more. At the moment, we hope like hell that a month means a month. Just with, you guys will understand with shipping and all sorts. But I can tell you it is on the water. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that is also stunning. I really like that. Yeah. So Blackpitts, the who, the what, the where behind it. So again, the inspiration for Blackpitts comes from the Liberties area. Like I mentioned to you guys, you know, a real industrial area, and it was during the golden times. It was really the home of a lot of different malting warehousing and malting operations, and these were referred to as the Blackpitts because obviously they used to use a lot of peat and things to dry the malt and whatnot. So and the whole look and feel of the packaging, and obviously the name comes from, and it's a bit of a tip of the hat to the history of the Liberties area. So this is a triple distilled whiskey. All right. The malt is peated to 55 ppm. All right, for those people taking notes and interested in this sort of thing. And we actually get the peat from Glen Esk, which is in Speyside. And the reason why we use this peat is we don't really have a peat that's commercially available at the scale that we require in Ireland. So this actually kind of mimics pretty closely to the kind of peat that we would be using in Ireland. So that's the reason for that. We've aged this 2/3 of the liquid is aged in ex-bourbon barrels, and 1/3 in Sauterne. All right, and what the Sauterne tends to do here, and hopefully you're all picking up on it, is it adds a lot of those sort of deep fruity notes and that fruity character, and that hopefully you've been able to find throughout the whole range so far, because Teeling does tend to be quite fruit forward. And although 55 ppm, for those people who are familiar with that, or what that does to the whiskey, and maybe you were expecting that this would be a little bit more bolder. When I tasted this with the global brand ambassador, he was sort of explaining and talking through the fact that being triple distilled, that third distillation, what it really tends to do is it's kind of getting rid of a lot of that sort of medicinal smoke, or that medicinal character that we maybe are a bit more familiar with when it comes to Islay single malt Scotch whiskey, for example. And what we're left with is more of like a barbecue, or as I like to say, is kind of that campfire, you know, sweet smoke. Yeah.
Kenny, do you know if that's the actual residual ppm, or were they malted at the 55?
The malted at 55. Residual, yeah, I'm not too sure.
You'd have to think so. With
yeah, oh, absolutely, out, right? Yeah. If and when I find out, I'll be. Who asked? Who asked that question?
Who do you think?
Like, yeah, I will find the answer for you, my lady. Love it. Very good. Very good.
Another query there. Blackpitts is now part of the core range, isn't it?
It is part of the core range. Yep. But
forward.
Yeah, going forward, it is. I'm pretty sure that our allocation that we got for this year, you guys have got at Glengarry's. So if you want this, now would be a pretty good time to get it, because I'm not too sure when we're actually going to get more of it. But as they go on, it will become part of the core range. Yes. Cool. Alrighty, what we'll do is, so that kind of takes care of, I guess, the core range. So if we can just, I'm just going to take a couple of minutes for people to get up, stretch. If you need to wash your glasses, do so. If you need a snack, do that. Fill up your water glasses and so. But if you have any more questions or queries and things, now is also a good time to fire it through. But we'll get that going maybe at 8 o'clock on the dot. Does that sound all right? Cool. We'll do that. Perfect. I'll be back. Are there any more questions, T, so far?
No, but I've already heard from Elliot and Frank, and they're going to stop drinking Lefroy and kick on to the Blackpitts from now on.
Awesome. Yeah. It's a I think it really stacks up, you know, to any single malt, and especially in the peated world.
I'm actually just having some dinner and can definitely confirm the Blackpitts match as well. Sriracha. It's definitely a good spicy food whiskey. So
that's awesome. Just out of interest for those people that are still live and exclusive, did anyone try the Blackpitts with a little bit of added water? And if you did, maybe throw through some comments what you guys thought about it. If you did add a little bit of water, whether it was good, bad, doesn't need it.
Yeah, we actually had a comment straight away that someone poured some water with it,
cool.
and it definitely took it to the next level.
Yep.
And if she wants to unmute herself and explain.
Sorry, guys. There's me being like, oh, I just literally said I'm just gonna be ask less obtuse questions. I think what's nice about it is that the Sauternes comes through as a distinct characteristic when you add a little bit of water to it, as opposed to more of a general essence of the fruitiness that you might get alongside a peated whiskey. So that's what I appreciate. It just gets a little bit more distinction between the honey and the fruit note. So
yeah,
what a delightful thing.
Yeah. Thank you, Tash.
Sure.
Alrighty, it is 8 o'clock, so we'll get going again. All right, so we've just got, unfortunately, we only have 3 more whiskies to taste. I wish this could go on forever, but I guess we've pretty much covered most things to talk about Teeling. I mean, you know who they are, where they came from, how they came to be, and what they're trying to achieve. Hopefully, I put it relatively succinctly, some of the history that Irish whiskey went through, and also where we are today and where we're trying to head. So, because I didn't really want to do too much talking through the next 3 whiskies, because these are all like exclusive releases. Once it's gone kind of whiskies. So if you grab sample here, Stout Cask small batch, so this should be glass 1 flight 2, and put that into your glass. So the cool thing about this is, so over in Ireland, there is a craft brewery by the name of Galway Bay Brewery, and they are one of Ireland's most celebrated craft breweries, and they make some amazing beers, and they win all sorts of awards all the time. So they've been doing a bit of a collab with Teeling for the last 4 years on one of their beers called 200 Fathoms. So what they do is so the small batch that we tried earlier, the second whiskey of the evening, we send them some of our barrels that we use for that, and they actually age their imperial. It's a modern twist of an imperial stout in those barrels, and the result was absolutely amazing. So Teeling being Teeling, they thought that it would be pretty cool to do sort of a whole full circle. So now they're actually they got some of the old imperial stout or 200 fathom casks back to the distillery. So we take our small batch and we actually we age it in those barrels anywhere between 6 and 12 months. So I don't know. Unfortunately, I'll put my hand up. I should have probably told y'all to maybe try and keep some small batch from the beginning. Luckily, you can just go onto Glengarry's and buy a whole bottle and do this tasting yourselves. But it's really interesting to I guess compare, because we use the exact same whiskey, right? And we just age it for a further 6 to 12 months in these imperial stout casks. But the beautiful thing about this is that I think what it tends to do for me is it's and it says here as well, I think in your tasting notes, something about chocolate somewhere. Yes, it does. And that's for me, that is the one note that is highlighted to the nth degree now. And it's probably something that I haven't really experienced too much in any of the other whiskeys. But what I do also like about it is that everything they do for a reason, right? It would have been really easy just to have the marketing spin of this whole full circle, working with one of Dublin's top craft breweries, etc. But there's a reason for them having made this product, and again, it's pretty awesome. And you'll see that this is the kind of thing that Teeling is really starting to be known for. You might have to jump in here, T or Liz or Aroha. Do you guys have any more of the Teeling Rockburn?
No, when I last looked, there was one bottle.
Oh.
That was in Wellington,
Ouch.
in like Kelburn or something. So it's on its way to our spirit store. So
okay, all right.
Whoever puts their hands up first.
Yeah. so Teeling, you know, they have this amazing program where they genuinely want to work with individual markets and things. So Teeling is around about 37 different markets around the world now, which is pretty cool. But they still work like it's your mate Joe down the road. It's freaking amazing. So we much like this, we did a collab between Teeling and Rockburn. So Rockburn from Central Otago. So we actually sent one of their Pinot Noir barrels over to Ireland, and they aged some 14-year-old whiskey in there for us. And it was the result was absolutely stunning. And we yeah, as you can see, as T was saying, we sold out pretty quickly. So they do a lot of collaboration stuff, especially for markets and things. There's obviously someone asked about Grabbers on series, but yeah, it's pretty cool. So I've just started working on a project for those people who are interested or who actually bought the Teeling Rockbird. So we're 95% sure that we're going to do a volume 2 and a volume 3. So we're actually going to send over a couple of different Rockburn barrels, like they have their 8 barrels program and stuff, Rockburn do. So we're going to send over a couple of special casks. They're going to look after it for a longer period of time for us. So we'll definitely have series 2 and series 3. And then we're also looking at another winery, and I'm not meant to say, but I'll do it anyway because I don't care. I do what I want. So we're also looking at working with Akarua, so down in Central Otago. So and hopefully we'll be able to do series 1 and series 2 in the coming years. So it's pretty exciting. And for me, I guess as a brand ambassador, it's pretty awesome that a relatively big whiskey company is still willing to work with us, I guess, for you guys. No one else in the world gets to see the Teeling Rockburn apart from the guys at the distillery who make a few bottles disappear every now and again, which they're really good at doing. So, keep an eye. Yeah.
I realize you've already said Akarua, but just because one of the family members is in this tasting, what about Love Block for Central Pinot barrels?
Yep, maybe. We honestly just looked at a couple of different options, but if at the moment it feels like there is enough people who are interested in expressions like this. So the more that people buy, the more, I guess, risk we are willing to take, because we still have to find a home for somewhere between 200 and 250 bottles. So, yep, potentially. Do you like how that was non-committal?
Yeah, very political response, that's for sure.
Which is very unlike me. I'm not a political person at all. Yeah, well, yeah.
I'll just swinging back to the Stout cast. Lots of comments about just notes of Christmas pudding.
Yeah.
Lots of cocoa powder and things on the nose. Yeah.
Yeah.
Looking quite good.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's it's a pretty awesome expression, and again, it's one of those things that is here now, and it won't be coming back. And we have some stock. I want to say maybe we have maybe 50, 60 bottles or something in the country, and that'll be the end of it. So yeah, again, these are collector's items, and a collector's item at $90 is pretty cool. It's a one of a kind. So yeah, if you're interested, I think the guys will tell you later, but they're going to send out an email and you can buy products and whatnot. So I've definitely bought a few of these because I think over time it's going to tell the story of Irish whiskey and the Teeling brand. So I'm excited by that. All righty. So now we'll move on to the Teeling 18-year-old Renaissance Series Volume 2. So just for those people, if you are paying attention to your booklet, all right, there's just one little typo in there. It says enjoying a finishing period in Madeira cask. That was the Volume 1. So we are trying the Volume 2 tonight, yeah? So this is finished in Australian Shiraz cask. Cool? All right.
I'll take the blame for that little mishap.
You don't need to, mate. It's one of those things, and
we'll
no one blames
on.
no one. Yeah.
Obviously, which Australian Shiraz cast,
Unsure.
Nah, so it's not through anyone we know.
No, this wasn't my doing, unfortunately. I wish I could put claim to having worked with them on this. So as you can tell, hopefully, the Renaissance series is really about, I guess, moving forward, and living in this hopefully new golden age of Irish whiskey. So what we've seen over the last few years is, I guess, Teeling putting out some really, really rare and old stock, which is amazing for us as consumers. And I do want to say a genuine massive thank you also to the team at Glengarry's for putting products like this in the lineup. It is a little bit more expensive, and especially the 28, which we will try. But it is an absolute treat, even for me as, I guess, the host. So thank you so much for allowing everybody to try these products. I really appreciate it. It's amazing. So here we have, as you can see here, first matured in ex-bourbon barrels and then finished in Australian Shiraz. So the finishes that we have talked about so far in our core range, they tend to be around 6 to 12 months. When it comes to the 18 and also the 28, that jumps up to about 4 to 6 years, all right, when it comes to the actual finish. So if you've already had a look at it, but if you look at the color of this, it kind of, it's, to me, the color is, again, that wonderful, beautiful sort of peachy hue that we also got from the single grain. And you can see that, that Australian Shiraz barrel has really imparted a fair amount of color, but also, obviously, on the nose, it is super duper rich. It is. And it's always one of those things, once you know, I guess, what it's been aged in, your mind straight away wants to think that it can taste it. But I can genuinely taste Shiraz characteristics in this, in both. I can get it on the nose, but also on the taste. And it really takes me sort of a couple of small sips to get the palate going, to sort of find those other layers, right? We're getting a lot of sort of red fruit, cherry, there's a little bit of spice. But yeah, for an 18-year-old, this is, super complex. But one of the good things, and I'll give my good friend Tasha a prop here. Well, something I've learned from her is when we're tasting spirits, it doesn't matter what it is. And she said it. You used the word again earlier today. It's all about integration, and those flavors combining to make, I guess, a full artwork. And I think that with Teeling, I think they've done such an amazing job of allowing all the flavors and combinations to stand out individually, but also work all together to create this wonderful art piece. And I think that the 18-year-old and certainly also the 28, just are exceptional. Amazing. What do you guys think? Have there been any comments? It's good that tea's gone missing. That's
I was going to say, I think we lost tea for a minute. You have to come back to me. Hey, I'll start with my comment then, Kenny.
Yeah,
perfect. Aussie Shiraz, particularly when it's from sort of the heart of the Barossa and a warm vintage, it always has like a velvety chocolate note to it. And, I can sort of see that coming through this, which, I really like. And we've actually got lots of other comments here, in fact, huge amount of them. Someone does think it's got too much of a wine taste.
Too much, yeah.
Yeah, which is a fair comment. It's probably why I got a little excited. Guessing the Shiraz barrels might have been American oak with great spice and cherry, which is a really good call because, it's very likely there'd be at least some of them would be American oak, I'd say. It's just got that sort of vanilla character will come through as well. And then so much cherry on the nose, it's delicious. And then where have I got to? I think this one is about it as well as the marzipan. Am I right, Tash, that this one is this as well? Yep, okay. Can't work out where the notes started. There's so many on this. Marzipan, cherry, tannins, crystallized grape, sugar, toffee. This is so killer. I think I got all the words. There's lots there, Tash.
I love it. I love it.
And then we've got there's beautiful crisp white peach note on the finish. Yeah, really nice. Kind of like those those flat peaches you get. I don't know what they're called. Tasha's nodding. They kind of taste like this. Lovely, soft, juicy aromatic note. And then totally white peach candied cherries and a warm, full mouthfeel. Yeah, so huge amount of cash on that one.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so cool. And I think the beautiful, like when it comes to whiskey, and I guess doing a lot of tastings and things like that, is often I take a sip and then I do a lot of talking right in between, which allows me to really sort of pick up on the length of a whiskey. But even as I sat here now and I was listening to Liz, and you just kind of breathe in and out, the length on this is unbelievable. And I guess when you have a Shiraz, it's the same kind of thing. You get some beautiful Shirazes. They have this amazing sort of, and it kind of just drops away over time. And even now, now the spice is starting to show up, right? So yeah, I agree that there's all this fruitiness and but at the end now it's still developing now, which to me, again, sorry Tasha, see your word, that whole integration thing, man, like I think they've done to use your word, a killer job. And yeah, I think it's pretty special. It's pretty awesome. And again, if we're going to put a price to it, man, at $250, sign me up. It's pretty awesome to be able to share this with friends and things like that and family would be a pretty cool thing to do. All right. So we'll move on to unfortunately the final of the evening. Just wash out my glass. Alrighty, so in front of us, you should have a glass 3 Fight Free, and this is obviously the Vintage Reserve 28-year-old. I don't know about you guys, but I'm a bit giddy about trying this. I think it's pretty cool. So excuse me while I just enjoy this for a second. Wow. Yep, that's pretty special. That's pretty awesome. So I'm guessing most people have already read the notes there. So yep, in 2019 we won Best Single Malt in the world, which is pretty awesome for an Irish single malt. And that was with the 24-year-old, and that was also had been aged in ex-bourbon casks, and then had a Sauterne finish on it. So the 28-year-old that we're trying today is using the same cask, so ex-bourbon and Sauterne, obviously a little bit more age. And this is some of the oldest Teeling stock that you will ever try, unless you live for another long time. They'll probably make some more older stuff, but at this point in time, did have a Teeling 37-year-old as one of the expressions. But if you just, and I ask most people to do this, this is the age statement on this is 28 years, and I don't know how old the crowd is, but last time I checked, 28 years is a hell of a long time. And the things that have happened in the 28 years that this was laying, resting, and coming to life is pretty cool. So again, very special whiskey, and to be able to enjoy this on a Friday night because you all made the decision to jump online and support Glengarry's, a local business as well. So that's freaking awesome. So this whiskey is distilled in 1991. All right. I talked about the cask, ex-bourbon, Sauterne finish. Again, approximately 4 to 6 years, and there are only 4,000 bottles of this. And again, when it comes to the flavor profile, I think it's pretty true to form. I do think that it is, out of everything we've tried tonight, I think it is a lot more complex. Even from the 18, this is, it is a huge step up. I haven't, like I said, this is the first time I've tried it. I haven't quite figured it out, so it's hard for me to actually give my opinion on the spot, but I think it's pretty true to style when it comes to Teeling. It does have, those tropical notes that we talked about. I've heard a lot of mentions of peaches and stuff like that. Again, I can find that in there. The spice, a little bit of chocolate again. But I think that the beauty is in the finish. And I like that the oak is actually, 28 years in an oak barrel is a long time, but I like that it's not too overpowering. Yes, it's there, the tannins are there, but I do think that it lets the other flavors come through. So I think that, again, when they chose these barrels, they've done a very, very, very good job on it. So we should just enjoy this. Eh? I think it's pretty special to be drinking this. T, hit me with some questions or comments or anything, mate.
It's so good, Kenny. Like I just had one sip and I'm just too scared to take my next one.
I know. Feel bad, eh?
I mean, for someone that was the smallest 30 ml sample they've ever had.
Yeah.
Definitely, I got all those white peaches and spices you got, and there's definitely like a note of like sea air and saltiness that sort of was like really struck me on that one.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know 28 years old. This crowd's clearly all younger than that. I myself am only 25, so it's great to try something that's older than you.
You're lucky everybody's 7 whiskeys deep, mate. They'll believe anything, man. Yeah. Alrighty, team. So if you do have any more questions, just fire them through. We can hang out and stuff. We can answer some more things. If you have any I haven't really touched on the distillation process and what makes them different and all that sort of stuff. I guess one thing that I could just quickly highlight and it would probably explain a little bit, I guess, why there's a lot of tropical like fruity notes coming through the whole range. So, and that's got to do with, I guess, their fermentation. So they use 2 types of yeast. One of them is just a brewer's yeast, but the other one is like a South African wine yeast that they use. And what that tends to do is in the fermentation process is really develop some of that more fruity character and especially tropical notes. So, but as you guys would have seen that when we're talking about maturation, like these guys are the real deal. The way that they use different barrels. The biggest thing for me is that there's a reason behind what they're doing, which I absolutely love, and I think that they're just absolutely nailing it. I mean, these whiskies are crazy, right? Like, there's not one there that you're like, oh, actually, I don't know. They all have a place, and I think that one is as good as the other, and they have some awesome, unique stuff in like Irish pot still, and the addition of a peated. I mean, I wish we could get our hands on more of it right now, because once I start tasting this with people out and about, I just know people are going to go crazy for it. And then obviously the limited edition stuff. I mean, the 28-year-old, once it's gone, it's gone. I think in New Zealand our allocation was about 8 bottles or something like that. I've purchased one because I had to. There's no way I'm letting that one pass me by. So if you are interested in that, I understand that the price tag is a little bit more, but it is a piece of history that you can have in your home, and it's definitely worth celebrating a special occasion with. So I don't know if there's any other questions, T. Otherwise, I can say my final thanks, maybe.
There's lots of tasting notes that I'll sort of read out to you maybe a bit later, but there's a few that sort of stood out. And there was get a burst of Orangina or San Pellegrino fizzy orange on the middle of the palate, and that's just, I had to go back and search for that one. That's pretty good. 28-year-old whiskey is, someone was asking me about the price for $850. Any established distillery for a 28-year-old, how much is that going to set you back? $2,000-$3,000.
Yeah.
So whilst we have 5 bottles left, get it on the ground floor while you can.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and it's I mean, you also have to remember that, to be fair, right? And hopefully y'all are on the same page. Like, after we've tasted it, they could charge more for their whiskey. I truly believe, genuinely, you could easily put $10-$20 more on this range. And then over here, you could ask for a lot more. But genuinely, that the Teeling family, that's not what they're about. Like, when they say they are here to forge a future for Irish whiskey, they mean that like heart and soul, right? Like and if you guys are ever in Ireland, when the borders open up and stuff again, and we mean this from a Hancock's but also a Teeling perspective, make sure you get in touch with the people at Glengarry's or us at Hancock's. And we'll make sure that you get to meet Jack and Stephen, right? Like he's the managing director and the marketing manager. They don't care. They'll show you around the distillery, right? Like if you have a share a passion for whiskey and for teeling, yeah. But like I said, they could charge more, but they don't, and we're happy for that.
And I guess the whole point of this tasting was they've just done pretty well at the World Whiskies Award, winning the Best in Show with the 28, the Blackpitts, and the single grain. But they also won the 4th award for another release that's coming out. Do you guys know if you're getting that one?
We're not sure, mate.
You're not sure?
Please don't bring that one up.
A Teeling whiskey finished in a pineapple rum cask would be pretty good, I would imagine.
Don't ask me about that one, please, Steve. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Moving to Aussie.
The accolades are massive for Teeling, you know, and it's if you go on their website, if you want to, they have like a virtual distillery tour as well if you're interested, so you can have a look at the makeup. They win distillery like tour of the year. That's an award as well. Icons of Whiskey is a pretty major award, and the master distiller for Teeling has won that. He's got a background actually in beer, so the way that he incorporates his beer knowledge to the whiskey world, and he was Teeling's first employee, you know, and he's been there ever since. So it's an awesome team, but like it feels like a little family when you go over there, and that's why I guess we at Hancock's are so happy to be looking after them. So. All good.
Hey, Kenny, fantastic presentation.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely awesome. I know I've learnt heaps tonight, so been
cool.
Really, really cool. So thank you very much. Just a few things to sort of round up, and then, as you said, if anyone's got any questions or wants to chat more than welcome to. The first one was just a comment on, the price of that last one, and I think, we compared it to other whiskies that are out there at that sort of level, but I think also if you put it into the context of premium spirits. And, certainly if you look at some of the big names of the likes of cognac and, other things, it doesn't just need $10 or $20 on it. It probably needs another zero and then a bit more. That's an amazing spirit for that price point. So I think, really, really special to try it tonight, and really pleased that we dragged you along on Friday night. I'm sure you had 1,000,001 other places to be.
Yeah, my bedroom, yeah. For a change of scenery, yeah.
Yeah. Hey, guys, just a few other things. As Kenny alluded to before, we will send an email out tomorrow, which will have a copy of this tasting, so a recording of it, which you can watch again if you would like to. The